11 in the morning, all of our executive board, we all came to the school and we set up 18-hole like mini golf courses. It was like a huge puzzle piece and it was awesome. So all of us had to work together, and it was like kind of like, it was good for all of us to like work together and trying to figure out how to put all the pieces together, because the first couple of times it was so hard because like we didn't know how they all went together, and like we would do it and we thought it was good and no, it's not all right. So it was fun to do it that way. And when it was from 1 to 5 and we raised $675 altogether.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And all of it goes towards the Jimmy Fund and Dana-Farber for cancer research. So that was awesome. And so February 1st, we turned in our MASC Excellence book, and I brought an example of last year's book. Pretty hefty. There's about 50 indicators, and each indicator, it like targets like why our council deserves to be a gold council. And we've been a gold council for, I want to say this would be the 5th year in a row. And it's all about our community service projects, Spirit Week, pep rallies, all the stuff we do as a council. And I brought this so you guys can look at it. We have like all pictures here of all, like, this is from pep rallies. It's from Officer Shop in the fall. And we have when Sam ran for MASC Vice President, Spirit Week, and MASC. So you guys all want to look at that too? So you want to pass that around and look at that? Pretty much all I have. If you guys have any questions about that excellence
When
book.
do you find out about the
Gold Council?
Gold Council?
We find out at the conference. It's the last day, and all of the councils find out. So it's like we have them all laid out, and we go to a banquet where all the officers on the state board like say thank you for electing them and all they've done throughout the years. And then that we all look at each other's excellence books and like see what ideas they have for the cover and like what else, how they formatted theirs, just to like get inspiration from other people. And then the executive or the advisor of our state, Paul Brannigan, he's also the principal at Middleborough High School. He announced, yeah, he's awesome. I love him.
Yeah.
He announces what councils and what they've won. So I think it's like everyone gets an award for at least turning one in, but gold is the highest you can get, and we've achieved that. We've only gotten silver once, but we don't like to talk about that.
And as a student council as a whole, you all do a tremendous job in terms of the amount of community service that you do.
Thank you.
And I think you do a really good job in terms of incorporating the entire student body into your events and activities. And you're always striving to do that to be the best you can be. So I'm always impressed by that.
Thank you. If you guys have any questions, I know I kind of went a little bit fast, but it's a lot of work, that excellence book. There's so many. It's like each indicator, it's like why it meets it, how you do it, description of it, like how it's better than last year's. Like we also applied for a top 10 project, and we usually do Crusader Fest, but we wanted to change it up this year, and we did the Apple Pie Social, which is when senior citizens all come down and we like make them pies and they play bingo and they love it. It's so fun. So that's what we did this year for our top 10 project.
Yeah.
For the conference? Yeah. I want to say March 8th to the 10th, so it's something like that. Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, man. I just want to thank you for taking the time. I know coming out and doing this and presenting to us, it takes time out of your day, and you know you have other things to do. So I think I can speak to everybody. We really appreciate it. Like, this is a way to tie us in and get us in the articulate way that you describe all the events. It's really something. And I was just shocked again. I just asked Scott, what grade is she in? And Scott said, she's a junior. I mean, really run with this. You have a great presence. And it's really great. I look forward to being here for the next year of you doing the same thing. So
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That's so nice. Thank you.
So to add what Andrew was saying, I was about to say it's probably not the first time you've heard it, but your enthusiasm is contagious.
Thank you.
I think it's nice that you bring that, but I think Scott really hit it on the head, because when you're in student council, that's that idea of leadership. And sometimes leadership isn't telling people what to do; it's getting others involved. And the fact that you noted that's a big focus of what that you guys do, that you get others involved in what's happening, and that's awesome. So
well, thank you for
once again,
appreciating
thank
this.
you, and nice to have you here with us again. So
Thank you so much.
That's terrific. Thank you, Jen.
All right.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
so no captain's council tonight.
No Captain's Council.
So we can move on to the approval of the minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular session and executive session from January 8th minutes, please.
So do we do those separately because the executive are not to be released?
Nope, that's
can
that's
still be
assumed.
bonded
Yep, they
that
can be
way,
bonded, they
that's
can be put together.
I'll second. Oh, you want a second? I'll second.
Any comments or questions or anything? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, is it okay if I make a suggestion that maybe we move two things out of order on the agenda?
Yeah.
So the first one would be, we do have Carl Miller here with us, who's applied to be appointed to the Recreation Committee. Carl is down the end of the agenda. Carl, we'd love to have you stay for the whole meeting, but if maybe we take the opportunity to bring you up now and do the appointment, and then you can stay as long as you'd like to stay after that. So if we move towards the end of our agenda, Carl has applied for appointment to the Recreation Committee. He'll be attending. Obviously he'll be attending the meeting, and we'll have the opportunity to thank him for applying and ask any questions that we have. Just for point of clarification, he's going to be replacing the resignation by Kelly Lynn DeCarly. Kelly Lynn's appointment ran through the end of this year, through June 30th, 2018. So the appointment tonight by the school committee, if you so wish to do so, would be through June 30th, 2018. And then Mr. Miller, you'd have to reapply again in June if you were interested. So you get to try it out for a few months and see if this is something that you want to stay with.
Okay.
And obviously, I know that the Recreation Committee has been taking on a lot of work recently and has been trying to reorganize itself. And there's been a couple resignations, but there's also been some new appointments. And I know Mr. Miller has worked with baseball.
Yeah,
I was the president of the baseball league for a couple of years. Has really been active in town, and I think he'd be a great addition to the Recreation Committee. So, Mr. Miller, I don't know if there's anything you want to add specifically in terms of your application, or
Well, like you said, Scott, that I've been involved with baseball and Carver youth sports since when I played it when I lived here as a kid and to now. I was on the board of directors, being the president of the league 2 years. But now I don't have any kids in the program anymore, and I'm looking for a new way to be involved and help out. And I know the rec committee has been underserved for quite a few years now, so I'd love it. I'd love the opportunity to help out in that way.
I was about to say, I've sat on this committee where we've tried to fill that position, so it's very nice to see you here. You could just change the date on that when you come back in June.
Okay.
You're all set.
No, I like it to be official.
But I appreciate your involvement, and I think it's great. As you mentioned, we've had a hard time filling these positions sometimes and getting people involved. So it's nice when we're losing one of that position's getting filled right up. So.
I think it's actually an important committee to
Very
do
much
because
so.
it's the kids in sports and just keeping the youth involved in the town. I think that's an important thing. So
Very much
I like
so.
to try and help out as much as I can and do whatever I can for the town.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I think the rec committee is going to be expanding to adult activities as well
Yeah.
at some point with the my rec.
And well, actually, they actually started. So Mr. Schultz and Mr. Santos, Mr. Schultz, athletics, Mr. Santos, a physical education teacher at the middle high school, have been working with the rec committee in terms of trying to expand some opportunities. And they did some adult volleyball this fall. So they've already been running some adult programs. So I know the committee, obviously it's going to take the direction the committee wants it to.
Right.
But I know the committee has been looking to expand its services beyond athletics and to give recreational opportunities for the entire community.
I think there's plenty of opportunity in this town to expand the rec committee's role. And I'm willing and glad to help out in any way possible.
There really is. I did some due diligence and asked some people. I hadn't met you personally, and a lot of people spoke extremely highly of you. And I really thank you for dipping back in after your kids had grown out of it and realized the importance of being a part of the rec committee and where it's transitioning to. I think it's moving forward, and it's moving to not only to the youth but also to developing programs for the older people as they transition. So thank you. Thank you for coming and being willing to be a part of this.
Well, thank you.
Accept the motion?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to. Is this a nomination or
Yeah, to appoint.
to appoint Mr. Carl Miller to the Carver Recreation Committee?
And I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Very much.
Thank you, Carl.
Welcome back.
See you in June.
Thank you.
And then, if everybody indulges me, the second thing that I'd like to take out of order is we do have a presentation this evening from Director of Special Education Karen Teichert and the Vogels, who are going to talk about their work at Wellsprings Farm and working with some of our middle school students in the alternative learning program this year. So the Vogels have been great to come out tonight, and I said that I'd, if I had the opportunity, I'd move them up in the agenda a little bit, if that's okay with everybody.
Definitely.
All right. So. So.
It's okay with me.
So come on up.
We got some fun ahead of us, though. You know.
I had a committee with Mr. Town Meeting in Rochester, and it doesn't go, quite like that. I'm Jim Vogel. This is Holly Vogel, and
Come on up.
yeah,
Come up to the mic.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Stand right in the middle.
As long as they can pick you up on that mic, which I'm sure they can.
Well, I think everybody can hear me.
TV.
We okay?
Yeah.
We're an outpatient group practice. Is it all right if I talk first?
Absolutely. I'm going to introduce you, but it doesn't.
We like-
He's
She's got some
going
talking
right
to do
in.
tonight.
He's going right into it.
Yeah, that's what we do. We're an outpatient group practice. We have 10 licensed clinicians. We had 12. We just lost 2, so we're looking for 2 licensed clinicians. Anybody here? LICSW or LM or anything like that? We do experiential therapy, and we utilize the horse farm and environment in a unique way to teach a sense of purpose for the kids. I say teach, but it's kind of the farm is able to express itself and really does a lot of the work. The idea is to have the kids exposed to the environment, to have an appreciation for nature. We have a 15-acre facility. We're adjacent to 100 acres of conservation land where we have trails and so forth. We appreciate the opportunity for kids to learn experientially as opposed to receiving therapy from inside of a building. We do a lot with autism, and we work with all special needs, mostly children. About 80% or so are under the age of 22 and 20%, adults. The whole idea here is for the kids, I'll say the kids, to have an opportunity to experience things that maybe they haven't before, under the supervision, the guidance, the therapy of a licensed clinician. That's why we're different. We're the only ones in the country actually doing this, and we've had calls from all over the country. We've had calls from England, we've had calls, if you can believe it, from Cairo. Mental health is an interesting theme these days, and a unique way of being able to work with those who might have a diagnosis in this way has been incredibly important. We are a farm, and I will tell you that it's impeccably clean. Holly especially is neurotic about the cleanliness part of it, and she's hard on everybody. But we have the kids participate too, which is all a part of this. We've got 9 horses, we have a donkey, we've got alpacas, we've got goats, pig, Harriet, who has a half-sister, who is actually from Florida. The kids love to work on the farm, they love to assume responsibilities, giving them, as I said, a sense of purpose. They know that they can do things and be successful, something maybe that they haven't experienced in the past. We work a lot with all of your human service agencies of the Commonwealth. We're quite large with the Division of Children and Families. We do a support stabilization program with them. We get a number of grants. We were very, very happy to work with the Genesis Foundation in Boston. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of that. Some of us who are a little bit older might have heard of Dr. Murray Feingold, but there isn't anybody here that comes close to this age here, and nor is there in the audience. But he had created a foundation to work with kids with congenital involvements and so forth. But we became known to him about 18 years ago, 17 years ago, so they've been with us really, for quite a period of time. So we haven't worked with Carver. We've worked with a whole array of the towns, in the area for after-school programming. So we said, well, we haven't talked to Carver, so we found out Karen, made a call to her and said, introduced myself, and I said, we have some money and we'd like to do an after-school program with you, and of course this is marvelous. So she jumped right on it, and let me compliment this town on its teacher staff, and also Karen as well, that have been incredibly invested in this unique opportunity for the kids. Some of the parents have come out, which we invite, and we like them to see and to participate so that they can see what the kids do. But the staff are unbelievable. We have some alpacas, and you know, you haven't seen your teachers actually chase alpacas. That's probably not within their contract. But this happens, you know, at Wellspring. So it's a very, very welcoming environment. Wellspring means an unending source, okay, of goodness and so forth. And this is what we feel that we do. It's kind of spiritual in nature. I don't mean from a religious standpoint, but it comes from within, and the kids pick up on this. It's wonderful to be outside. It's a terrific opportunity for us to work with kids and see what they can really accomplish when given the opportunity and the concept of actual basic trust. And this especially works with kids that are with the Division of Children and Families. We've got lots of credentialing. We're with Mass Health, and we're with a whole array of insurance companies, Mass Behavioral Health Partnership, and I don't know, we're just across the board in terms of our credentialing, which makes a lot of sense because that way we can work with a whole array of opportunities for kids. Holly, is there anything you want to, I don't want to talk too much, but I want to leave it open for, there's a lot to get in here. There's 18 years experience with this, so, but go ahead.
Karen, I don't know if you want to address a little bit in terms of what students have been going to Wellsprings Farms, who's been working with them.
Yeah, so Mr. Vogel called over the summer, and we actually started over the summer with some of the groups that are in the more alternative learning programs. So, but it's a range. So we have 2 groups going that he was able to fund through grants, and they go once a week. They actually go during the school day, and they go and they're able to get some therapies and get on and ride and just run around the farm a little bit. And I particularly over the summer, as soon as the kids had gone a couple times, so we had 2 groups going, as soon as I started getting calls from the paras and from the teachers just saying what a great experience it was. And I got one call from a para that had gone and subbed one time, and she said, can I just keep going? You don't have to pay me, I just want to keep going. So it was just a great experience for all of them. So we've been feeling really fortunate that these kids get that opportunity. So there's about I think we have about 15 kids that end up going once a week.
What happens here too is, you should know that the teachers get down and dirty with the kids too. So that's really important because there's not that dichotomy. So it's a relationship that we're all able to develop to work together for a common cause there at Wellspring. But I will say that the teachers are exceptional from Carver. And we've been doing this, as I said, for really a while. And in terms of my communication with Karen, it's incredibly reciprocal. Karen's always there. She answers the phone, which is something that doesn't happen too often. So that helps to make the whole thing work. We expect the grant to continue, and I'll do everything I can. I'm usually pretty good at getting money, and hope to keep it going for an indefinite period of time. It's really, on behalf of the kids and their families, it's really very, very successful.
I just want to thank you for the opportunities that you've provided to our students, and for the work you've done in terms of having this all be grant funded and reaching out to us and saying, here's an opportunity. And we do have great teachers here in Carver, and they've done a great job in terms of having this become successful. I've heard nothing but positives from anyone who's been involved so far.
And all of you, just give us a call. You can get away from your desk, and we would love to show you around. If you haven't seen the website, there it is, wellspringfarmlearningcenter.com. And there's a video on there too. And we'd love to spend some time with you. Come out when the group is there.
That sounds great.
It's an open place for you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to reiterate from Scott, from the community, you for reaching out to us. Thank you. It's interesting when things are right at your doorstep and you don't even know it.
Well, we're really pleased that we did, because it's been positive for us also with the kids and also with your staff.
This is a fantastic town, so thank you for joining us. And
thank you for having us.
All right, thanks for coming tonight. Thank you.
One town over.
Almost business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right, thank you.
We got all the fun stuff up front now, though. It's all front
There's
loaded
just
there,
lots of-
buddy.
There's-
Trying to get it to look.
Yeah, so you're just trying to get the video load.
We're just.
How long is the video?
It's not real long, but I mean, I would just suggest.
It was good fun. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so I guess we'll go back to
Communications?
go back to the agenda order. So we've had some communications this month. The first, I just wanted to share a letter that I sent to Senator Pacheco and to Representative Gifford. As we've discussed over the past couple of years, the state has not fully funded circuit breaker. The circuit breaker account is supposed to reimburse the district for out of district costs above $42,000 for any individual special education student. Historically, at times, circuit breaker is funded at 75%, and the law actually requires it to be funded at 75%. In the last few previous years, including this year, it's only been funded at 65%. The Mass Association of Superintendents actually reached out and asked that all superintendents to contact their local representatives, asking them to fully fund circuit breaker for this year. So I've attached my letter and drive. You've had the opportunity to see it. That did go out to both Senator Pacheco and Representative Gifford. If circuit breaker was to be funded at 75% this year, that would increase our reimbursement by $60,000. So that 10% gives you a sense of where we are in terms of circuit breaker. And obviously we're also advocating strongly that in the FY19 budget that they appropriate a funding level of 75% for circuit breaker. We've talked about this again over the last couple of years in terms of the Foundation Budget Review Commission, who's looked at the funding of schools throughout Massachusetts. We've mentioned that commission a couple of times in their recommendations. And one of the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission was, one of the areas of weakness is said that the state really isn't keeping up with the increase in special education costs. And we're going to see a little bit of that tonight when Karen does her special education budget presentation in terms of where the state's not keeping up and seeing how those costs are increasing, but the funding necessarily isn't increasing on the state side, which increases the burden on individual communities to meet those needs. So there's been a strong advocacy position from the statewide Association of Superintendents, pushing legislators to fund circuit breaker at 75% for the remainder of this year and for next year. I don't know how much traction they're going to get for this year, but I feel like we've heard some rumblings that there's some traction for next year. Though in our budget presentation, we are still only planning on receiving 65% in terms of the budget that we've put together at this time for reimbursement for next year.
Scott, I would, when we went to the representative luncheon that day, one of the things that several of them tend to focus on was who they hear from, and the fact that they don't hear a lot from their constituents and the people that it matters. So you as a superintendent's committee are doing this. Should we be thinking about trying to do something as a committee and as a town and maybe gathering with other school committees?
Other school committees, because
to get a message out collectively that way to them also, to show them that it's not just you guys.
And that was an interesting point when we went to that luncheon, in essence saying that they hear a lot more from the municipal side than they do from the school and the school committee side. And I think the Mass Association of Superintendents are pushing that point of advocacy, and I think it would be great if the school committees would do that as well. And obviously the individual school committee could do that as well. I mean, so if we wanted, we could craft a similar type of letter from the school committee instead of from me, and send those off. And then in terms of the regional school committee group, we could reach out to them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be a way to try to start to get some regional ideas and some support there where it's collective. Mm-hmm. I think the more collective we can be, the more serious they're going to take it.
Yeah, my sense would be that superintendents respond to this call, and that many superintendents in the area, like myself, put a letter together to send off to the representatives about circuit breaker, because circuit breaker in particular is a huge issue in terms of some of the funding issues that we face as a community.
Have you heard from other superintendents in the area that that their committees felt that we should kind of
I have not have had any discussion about committees acting.
How would we push that? What would be the best way?
Honestly, I think that would kind of be up to us to maybe make some calls and try and connect to other committees. I don't think we have.
Well, there is
like you.
there's the Mass Association of School Committees.
Right.
Yeah, so the Mass Association of School Committees, you could reach out to them. They have representatives who work for representing the school committees of the state of Massachusetts. We can make some outreach to that group to make the same level of advocacy. They often work in concert with the Mass Association of School Superintendents. So I do not know that they did on this particular issue. They might have already, so I can do that research as well and just even see if they've done that.
We can check on that too.
Yep.
Tammy, if you don't mind me asking, is that anything the union is interested in maybe supporting or, adding another voice to that perspective with that also? Awesome.
So,
I think the more collective we can get with that, the more effect or impact we're really going to have, So I can reach out to Mask. I don't know if anybody else wants to try and see.
Yeah, if you want, I can do that I can do the research for you to find out was there anything specific that's happened through the Mass Association of School Committees so far. If there hasn't been advocating for that or doing something.
Newsletters, and I really haven't seen anything.
no. So we'll leave it that you'll update us next meeting?
Yep.
That'll work?
Yeah, we can bring that back.
Okay.
I'll reach out to. I'll see. I got a name from somebody.
Oh, you do?
Call
Okay.
and see.
Great.
A second area of communication was the ExxonMobil Educational Alliance. And this was actually a grant that the school district received, and we found out information about in January. Slowly loading up for me here. So really, I wanted to point out that this is from ExxonMobil, but we were nominated by New England Farms in Carver. So the New England Farms gas station in Carver is part of ExxonMobil. They have access to this grant program. They can apply as a store within the community. They applied, and then they received the grant. So it's an amount of $500, and it's supposed to be used to support a math or science initiative within the district. We have not, to my knowledge, Mrs. Hawley, it's gone to the middle high school, but we haven't specifically identified which math or science initiative it's going to support. So we can get back to you on that. But we just found this out within the last month. And we more so wanted to recognize New England Farms, the Carver store, for applying for this grant. So they applied, they received the grant, they provided us with the $500, and it has to go specifically to support a math or science program at the middle high school. So we'll be moving forward on that. But as I said, I put it on the agenda more so as a recognition for them to take the initiative to apply for the grant.
Can we send them a?
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely, we can send them a thank you. Yep. So
That's great.
we can do a thank you from the committee for them for applying for the $500 grant.
Perfect.
Yeah, we very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm glad Mr. Miller's still here. We could have invited his son, Nathan. Maybe he can address it. So on our Mr. Miller's son, Nathan, we want to recognize him for being selected as the Jewish War Veterans Classmates Today, Neighbors Tomorrow Award. The recipient is selected by the staff at Carver Middle High School based on community citizenship, school citizenship, and the exemplification of spirit and goodwill. The nominated student is entered into a scholarship selection process run by the Jewish War Veterans. 3 nominated students from across the state receive a $1,000 scholarship. 3 receive a $500 scholarship. The rest of the students who are nominated receive a thank you and congratulations and recognition. So Nathan was actually recognized, I believe, this past Sunday at their presentation at the Lantana? No, in Randolph in
Lombardo's.
Lombardo's in Randolph. And Mr. Miller, I'm sure you went.
Yes, we did. It was good. It was a very good presentation. They did a really good job, and I was very impressed with how they handled it. It's quite a group of kids that were there that got their presentations, they got the scholarships. I was very impressed with the whole thing. It was a great organization.
And I've attended that breakfast a few times as when I was the principal at the middle high school, and they generally do a great job. So we just want to recognize Nathan because he was officially became our representative over the past month.
Congratulations again.
How are the students nominated?
They're nominated by our staff through the Jewish War Veterans. So the Jewish War Veterans reach out to our guidance staff. We're allowed to nominate one student within our school. There used to actually be a local piece to it, and the local piece is kind of diminished. The interesting part is I believe, and Mr. Miller, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I don't know if this was actually addressed or not, that our local was actually out of Quincy. So not sure how. I'm not. So
We did talk.
so and they used to actually do a local breakfast. So that was the larger regional breakfast, but they used to do a local breakfast where we would go to the local Jewish War Veterans Assembly Hall in Quincy, and they would have the representative. They would have someone from Carver, a couple people from Plymouth, maybe Whitman Hanson. It was just 4 or 5 students who were in there local, and I always found it interesting. And sorry, I digress. This is why we go too long. I always found it interesting that we'd be in Quincy for this recognition, but there wouldn't be any students from Quincy. It would be Carver and Plymouth and Whitman Hanson kids, and at the local level, they used to actually ask that the school send someone to do the official nomination and speak on the student's behalf. And several times as principal, I went and spoke on the student's behalf. It was a very nice ceremony because it was a little more localized. It wasn't as big, it wasn't as large, and every student got recognized individually with some time. And the sad thing was, I think that that local chapter, just based on over time, just diminished in terms of its number of people involved, and so now they've given up on doing the local breakfast. So it's actually based on the local branch out of Quincy. They notify us every year that we as a school can nominate 1 student, and then that was not selected by the staff.
That's terrific.
Last piece of communication, the E. Tilson Pratt Trust Fund. E. Tilson Pratt was a teacher and educator in Carver who upon his death established a trust to be used in the benefits of the students of the Carver Public Schools. The trust has been administered over the years by several individuals, including Erwin K. Washburn and Donna Mountain. At different times, the interest earned from the trust has been dispensed to support our students. I've actually linked for you to view a copy of his will, the E. Tilson Pratt will and trust creation, and then I also just have a document on how the funds have been distributed over the last several years. The last time the fund was distributed was 2008-2009, and we have documentation back to, I believe, 1991, 91-92 of how the funds were used. During that time, the interest earned by the trust was what was being distributed. So Donna Mountain, who was one of the last surviving members of the trust, has actually moved forward to legally disband the trust. The trust is being broken down. And she came to me and said, what are some thoughts about how the trust can go with the concept of them supporting the students of the Carver Public Schools? She also mentioned that she was aware that we had moved forward to create a group called the Carver Educational Foundation. And she asked if that would be an appropriate way or appropriate place for the trust to go. And we felt that that would be a good thing to happen. So we spoke with the Carver Educational Foundation. They agreed to accept the money. So the trust has been disbanded, and the $17,622 that were in the trust have been passed to the Carver Educational Foundation. And then the Carver Educational Foundation will be using that money to support grants throughout the community. So actually within the next week or so, we're going to be putting out some grant information to the larger Carver community, allowing the faculty and staff or community members to apply for grants against the fund. The Carver Educational Foundation has also been working with Mr. Marsh in support of the running track that she wants to do based on, and I know we're going to invite Mr. Marsh for our March meeting to recognize the 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents that she just completed, and that a lot of the fundraising she was doing towards that was to support the creation of a walking running path track around the new fields at the new elementary school. At its last meeting, the Carver Educational Foundation has agreed to use some of the E. Tilson Pratt Trust Fund to support that project, and then we're going to be opening up for other grants. So I think this was just a great thing to have happen. The money was always designed for the purpose of supporting the students of Carver. Our goal will be similar to this, to have maintain a certain balance. When I say our goal, meaning the goal of the Carver Educational Foundation, which I'm on the board of. The goal of the Carver Educational Foundation will be similar to what the Tilson Pratt Trust Fund did, is maintain a certain balance and distribute a certain amount of money each year to support the students of Carver. So just making the committee aware that that's all happened in the last month. if there's any thoughts or comments.
I'd like to thank the Pratt Trust Fund. I mean, the $17,000. I mean, that's it's just a great gesture, and I couldn't thank them enough. I would like to kind of see where CEF, you had mentioned, maybe some possible scenarios, but it would be nice to kind of see maybe one of them to come in, maybe talk to us. Not that we would have any say in what they do with it, but just to know kind of their plans. That'd be great if someone came to a meeting or
we can
talk to us a little bit about it.
Probably not. I think that the March meeting, we got a lot of items we're starting to build up. But maybe we'll put out later in the spring, in either April or May, and I could invite the Carver Educational Foundation to come in and talk about. Because at that point, based on what we said as a timeline, we'll have put the grants out and probably supported 1 or 2 grants within the community. So the committee would know what grants we've supported within our own Carver community, and then talk about how they're going to support the running path that Mr. Marsh wants to do at the new elementary school.
Great.
Sounds good. Anyone else?
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. So now we move on.
All right, moving on to our
Budget.
update on the budget. So before we begin, I'll kind of give you a big picture idea of where we are. At our last meeting, I had stated that this evening we would kind of present to the committee a list of things we would need to do to meet the town's number. That if we were going to meet the town's proposed number for the school's budget, that to meet that number, last time we had a shortfall of $470,000 approximately, and we would come back to the committee tonight with a detailed presentation on what we could do to meet that shortfall. Based on some things that have happened over the last few weeks, we've had some changes. So I am slowing down the process a little bit. So we're going to stay with a more generic kind of overview presentation again this evening. Brad will kind of give us an update in terms of where we are and where we are in terms of that number. And the numbers come down. It's not $470,000 anymore of what our shortfall is. And we'll start to get into some details, but we'll go kind of a generic overview position. And at the end of that presentation, you'll have a sense of where we stand coming up for our meeting in the end of February 27th, where we'll do a little more detailed budget presentation. At that point, we'll provide you with all the individual line items. You can look at the background on all the individual line items, give you some recommendations of what we might need to do to meet the town's number if the committee decides to do that. All those things. So we'll have a little bit more detail at that point. And I had said we were going to do that this evening, but based on some events that have transpired over the last couple of weeks, we've in essence slowed that down a little bit. So what we are going to do this evening is Brad's going to do an overview again, and then Karen is going to do a detailed presentation on the special education budget, because the committee had asked for specifically more detail and background into special education, and so we'll make that as a more detailed presentation this evening. So with that, I will turn it over to Brad.
Which our second February meeting will basically have a budget focus. That's
the agenda. We have
so that meeting.
Yeah, that meeting we have a couple recognitions planned at the beginning, and then it's going to be budget.
Budget. Yeah.
So I think it's that one.
Is this a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
It's not reading it.
I'm not sure.
We have this space.
Mm-hmm. So to my knowledge, we do, and maybe not. We can ask Mr. Dunham that later. Slow spinning.
It is. Alright, so this is where we were in January. If you take a look, we had the proposal of $23,729,261. The town recommendation was $23,259,768, and that gave us our original projection of a $470,000 shortfall, pending negotiations. Where we are as of today
Brad,
Go
the
ahead.
town went up a little bit too, though, right, initially?
That was included in there. Yep.
This was already included
Yep.
in what they,
Yep. They
because
went
this is
from
higher than the
a
1.7.
This is 2.1.
It's 2.1.
Yep. So where we are as of today, our updated budget would be a recommendation of $23,655,691. Take off what the town's still projecting, it will leave us at $393,000, and that's again pending negotiations. What I've adjusted in here is our health insurance adjustment. I originally had it at 10%. After a gateway meeting, that's trending right around 7.5 to 8. So I put the 8 in there. It also captures our enrollment changes. We had about 3 people drop insurance actually, effective for February 1st. So take those off. I also took off 16,000 that was originally listed for the middle high school PCs. That will actually be removed from the budget and run off of capital improvement plan.
Okay.
Right. So in terms of percentage increases, the town's proposal, as James just asked, the $490,000 of new money what they're looking to give us would represent a 2.15% increase. Our updated school budget would be recommending a 3.89, which is down from, I think it was just over 4, our original proposal. The 9,000 series, and Karen will go in much more detail with this today, but since we first proposed this, it's actually gone up a little bit. And it's not based on our special ed piece, it's actually based on our vocational piece. We've had 10 new applicants to our vocational Aggie schools as of today, and they're actually still accepting applications up till March 1st. We originally had 1 new agriculture enrollment. That's based off of the last factors we had. Like last year, for example, we had, I believe, 5 kids applied, 4 got in, but only 3 ended up going. So again, you see the trend there that not everyone usually goes. A lot of these kids, that out of the 10 that we had, actually applied for Old Colony as well. So Old Colony is actually already counting them in their enrollment projection. Where they go, where they get in is a toss-up. So with that being said, we thought adding in the 4 new enrollments was a good number, safe number to put in for there right now. I'll continue to call and see where they are in that process, but they actually let me know if kids withdraw their application early. The process for this, though, it's kind of dragged out a little bit. They look to send their enrollment admissions saying you got in around April 1st. They actually kind of have rolling admissions to some extent, depending on whether or not they agree to sign up or not. So this, again, we're putting the 4 in there. We hope it's less, but just for a safety net right now, we feel like we need to put that in there. This also includes 30 seats to Reed's online courses. We had 15 this school year. We're going to look back again to see whether or not that's 30 is a little bit too high. But again, this is only about $270 per seat. That'll come down a little bit. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but that pretty much is our online access for students who want to take a course through Reed's Collaborative. They offer like not a virtual academy, but
Well, they do. It's called SCRO Virtual Learning Academy. So that we have partnerships with 2 online programs right now, in which students are taking courses on a regular basis. One is SCRO, and the other is Virtual High School. This year we did fill a lot of seats for those 2, for both of those schools. I don't know. So we did have 15. I don't know if we'll do an increase to 30. So when we come back in February, the February 27th meeting, we'll make a final adjustment there. So we might be able to take that down a couple $1,000s and just stay at the same 15 seats that we had this past year.
Yep. And one key thing that I want to mention that Karen will go in more depth on is these numbers are significantly skewed. So as this shows as a budget for FY18, our actuals actually are roughly about $300,000 more than that. The presentation will go in more detail on that, but that's the reason why this looks so adjusted. For FY18, actually, we have about $300,000 right now of money that was originally not allocated, but we had new enrollments, kids that got tuitioned out, and we also had a large increase on a couple of tuitions. Pack Academy, where we send 5 to 6 kids, that went up $10,000 on its own. So that change for FY18 is not included. So when you look at actuals for FY18, this isn't so drastic, but when you look at actually what's budgeted for right now, that's why you see such a significant gap. Just to recap offsets again that are built into the budget. Grant 240 and 305, we're going to take off $650,000 from the budget. Circuit breaker, $225,000. Again, this goes back to the whole 65% reimbursement rate. We budgeted for 65% this year with the thought process behind it that if we really rolled over about 50 to 75,000, I forget the exact number, not a healthy number for a school district our size based on, you guys saw this year, we're gonna have $300,000 of new enrollment come into play. So the goal is to undercut that, to build that fund back up. So honestly, when you look at what we're gonna take in projected for circuit breaker for next fiscal year, we're right around 350,000 at 65% reimbursement. If that comes in at 75, that's great, because what we really need to do as a board and as a school district is to build that reserve fund back up to get around the $300,000 range for your safety net. Tuition in is our programs that we tuition in students from other districts in. That's 50,000. Our pre-K fee, we're projected to take in 32,000. School choice right now is 125, and that's continuing on with just the kindergarten openings. As those kids stay though and go up our system, if they do stay in Carver, that's included in here. Athletics, we're going to continue the 150 per sport, and that's going to take in just over 63,000, again built in as an offset. Middle high school intramurals is $200 per year. That goes to offset revolving salaries and transportation. And the parking fee, $50 a year, which is $3,000 roughly, that offsets the high school graduation.
And that's the same fee structure we have this year, so that's no change in the current fee structure.
Yep. Items still in play, obviously, are the Aggie tuitions. 4 of them is roughly 86,000. School choice at the middle high school, to be determined. I think after talking with the administration, I think we're going to make a proposal to the school committee to see what your feel is on that and looking at opening up at the middle high school level. The town reserve for special ed tuition. So this is where a big item that comes into play for next fiscal year. As I mentioned to you guys before, we had roughly about 300,000 in unexpected costs this year for special ed. Right now, with the change in health insurance mid-year, we're actually going to recoup right around 250,000 in our budget that was set aside for health insurance. That's going to be free available money. So with that being said, what we'd like to recommend is move that 250 from the health insurance line item to offset the tuition shortfall. And what that would do is that allow us to use the sped reserve fund to get kicked in to the operational budget to help eliminate what we've already spent for circuit breaker. So it'd be a transfer from the 200,000 in special ed reserve to our operational budget. What we do is we take off what we already spent for special ed circuit breaker, kick that back into circuit breaker, and it free up $200,000 for us to use for next fiscal year to offset the budget by 200,000. It's kind of complex, it sounds like a lot, but when you see the math on it, it makes perfect sense how to go about this. And we'll talk more about this in the joint school committee and board of selectmen meeting, but that would be our proposal right now to help offset next year's shortfall. And also more possible reductions. Again, as we mentioned before, that these numbers are above the level service budget. Is the elementary supply items for 15,000, middle high school supply items for 25,000, and district-wide PD for 20,000, which gives you 60,000 total right there. And looking forward to our next school committee presentation in late February, our updated shortfall of right around 400. We'd look to use the sped reserve account to offset the 200 for next year. We look to possibly open middle high school school choice. We're going to project right around 75,000 for that, and the amounts listed in the last slide for above level service of 60,000. Take that off, and it leaves us with a shortfall right around 61,000. Again, these aren't set in stone. They're not 100% that we're going to recommend, but that's what we're leaning towards right now after our administration discussion on where we think to go to solve our budget shortfall.
And then we'll spend time over the next few weeks looking at where that 60,000 would come from in terms of our current projected shortfall. And I want to talk a little bit about school choice tonight, and because I want the committee to think about it a little bit, because if we are going to move forward with a formal presentation to approve school choice at the middle high school level, the committee would have to vote in support of that. And historically, the committee has taken our school choice vote in May. We can take that school choice vote at any time. Obviously, if we're going to make it as part of the budget presentation, I would recommend that we would do it before the approval of the budget, if we're going to roll that money into the budget, and then we just have to report that forward to the state. And we'll do more detail on that. But in Drive, I didn't link it, Meredith, but it's in there. If you can pull it up, there's a list of area communities that are currently school choice.
What's it called?
It is called School Choice Info, local districts. So we just made a list of local districts that are accepting school choice. Our thought right now, and this, like I said, this is just for a discussion for the committee to think about a little bit. We're not looking to take any action on this evening. Would be that we would open up school choice in grades 6 through 9 with about 5 slots at each grade. So for a total of 20 slots. We picked 6 through 9 because those are your transitionary years. And we feel like bringing students in at the transition point, specifically maybe 6th grade and 9th grade, when they'd be naturally going from elementary to middle school or naturally going from middle school to high school, that parents may take advantage of that opportunity to come into a district that has a smaller district, some different opportunities for students. We're not opening up the elementary school because even just the design and the build of the elementary school really supports our current class size structure. And when we go forward with this in February 27th, if we do go forward with this proposal, we'll do some slides on what our current class sizes are. But at the elementary school, we basically have 6 classrooms for each grade level. We have 125 kids in each class. Right now, that's what we're averaging. So we're pretty consistent in 20 to 22 kids per class. If you started opening up school choice slots at the elementary school into the new building, we might be pushing ourselves into classes over 25, which I don't think is something we'd be looking to do through school choice, and not necessarily have even the new building's built for 6 teachers in each grade. We have 6 teachers in each grade except for grade 5. So we don't want to put ourselves in that type of position. We are intending to keep the kindergarten open. So that the last couple of years and that's going to be based on kindergarten registration. So we'll start to look at kindergarten registration. We'll start thinking about our projections over time. We'll set a number of kindergarten kids that we would bring in because that's been a successful piece for us. And ultimately, the goal of school choice is to bring in enough kids, but not bring in too many kids. Because you don't want to be bringing in so many kids that you need to add staff to meet the needs of those kids. Because if you have to do that, then you're just washing away the advantage of the additional revenue you're bringing in. And I think overall, the school district has done a pretty good job of that. Since we've been open for school choice, which I don't know the exact number of years, at least 6 or 7, that I think there's only one year when we look back over the history that we brought in too many kids. We actually ended up hiring an additional kindergarten teacher because we brought too many kids in. And in that year, we just what we brought in school choice ended up just being spent on the teacher we had to hire to meet so you don't want to do that. But class size wise, 6, 7, 8, and 9, it's justifiable that we're going to be able to bring in 5 students at each grade level if we're able to do that. So we'll look at the transitionary years. In the past, there's been concerns about the students who might be interested in school choice, but my experience recently in talking to other superintendents, talking to some of these districts that accept school choice, is that it's really, especially in your transitionary years, it's your savvy parents, it's your parents who are looking for options, who are looking to take advantage of school choice. Unfortunately, I say it's unfortunate, but there's some students who are interested in athletics who make a move for school choice. And that can be in a variety of reasons. It could be that they live in a district that's really large and they're concerned their student may not be able to participate in athletics at the high school level. And they might look at a smaller district and say, hey, there's an opportunity for me to go and play where I won't have the opportunity to play in my high school. I say that's unfortunate because I don't think any student should school choice for athletics. I think there should be other reasons that they're involved in, but that's my personal opinion. And then I just even look at, within the last month as the superintendent, I've dealt with 4 residency issues where we currently have students who there's concern that they don't live in our town, but they're attending our schools. They lived in our town at one point during this year, but for whatever reason, they've moved during this year. And under our current school committee policy, we're not a school choice district, and we ask those students to leave and attend school in the district in which they attend. A couple of those families have been middle school families. And if we were a school choice district and we hadn't filled the slot, I could say to them, you can apply for school choice, you can stay, they're allowed to stay under our policy, and we'd actually receive the reimbursement for them staying. So I just look at the things that are out there. And the other piece of the reality is, and this is why I brought this slide up, is it doesn't have the years here, but school choice is moving in our direction. more schools on the South Shore are becoming school choice districts. As more schools become school choice district, that creates competition. And if you don't become a school choice district, all you're doing is losing kids, but you're not bringing any kids in. Now, obviously, your goal is to not lose kids, and we have to look at why would be losing kids and why. And this year it ended up only being 7 students, I believe. Right now, our current number is 6 or 7 students who have school choiced out of the district. I think it started at 7, might be down to 5, and because we had a couple kids come back. They school choiced out and then they came back. But 5, that's 5 kids. So you don't want to just be losing. You want to have the opportunity to take some kids in as well. And as more districts around you go school choice, you have to look at those things. The interesting piece of note is if you look down the bottom of this slide, Meredith, if you could scroll down a little bit, the Cape, and there's been concern about this, and I know the committee has to weigh this out. Cape Cod has really become school choice. The majority of schools on Cape Cod are school choice, and the kids on the Cape, in essence, get to attend whatever high school they would like to. And if you notice, there's no specified grades. If you look up the top, some of the local people have specified grades. Like Abington High School is grade 9 only, that transition year. Bridgewater Raynham is 9 to 12, 7 to 11, K to 3. Freetown Lakeville, 4 to 7, 9 to 11. We're kindergarten only right now. Where the Cape, it's wide open. You can go at any grade level, and it's become a huge competition down there. And I'll be honest and say that there are some concerns about that. And there are superintendents down the Cape who express concerns about that because there's been huge swings of kids down on the Cape, based on, in essence, because they're all wide open for school choice, and they're all competing against each other for these kids. But as I said, there's a reality piece within our area that's beginning to happen here. So if you look at West Bridgewater, Wareham, Taunton, Rockland, Plimpton, Old Rochester, Middleborough, Holbrook, Freetown Lakeville, East Bridgewater, Bridgewater Raynham, Abington. And these have become Brockton. These are schools in the area that have gone school choice, and several of them have gone the last couple of years. So I do think it's something for the community to take into serious consideration as we go forward in our budget. And the number we have in there is a conservative number. We're looking at maybe expanding 20 slots. It's $5,000 a slot, so that would be $100,000. We're not planning on offsetting the budget if we make this proposal by $100,000. We're saying maybe we don't get 20 kids to come, and we pick a number a little bit less than that. But I think it's an opportunity to maybe expand our budget a little bit and meet some of the budget situation that we're facing. So as I said, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information tonight. We'll talk more about this at our next meeting, but I wanted to give people some time to think about it, or to ask some questions tonight, which I may or may not have the answer for. Because I do think that making a decision to expand our school choice offerings is a major decision that we should take a little time and reflection on.
So we don't have to come up with any conclusions to decide on what we want to do tonight, but as a little history, the reason we were doing kindergarten only is because at the time Plymouth did not have full-day kindergarten, so it was a good way for us it was sort of beneficial on both ends, but it was kept kindergarten because generally that meant that most kids came into the system would stay in for the most part, which quite a few of them did, but I think that the demand on that's decreased a little since Plymouth has opened up.
What would happen a little bit is a lot of the kids would come for kindergarten but then go back to Plymouth because they wanted to go back to their home district. Some kids stayed, and ultimately, so Brad had a number in there of an offset of $125,000. That money is actually continuing revenue of school choice kids, mostly who have stayed within the district. So there actually, I think this year, for the first time, there were school choice kids in the middle high school. Middle high school teachers may not know that because they've school choice since kindergarten, and now they're in the 6th grade. But there are 6th graders who are school choice kids because once you enter, you can stay as long as you'd like. And once you enter, siblings can attend with you. So once a family's involved, a family's involved. This is anecdotal, but recently, as I said, we had a residency issue was a middle school student, and really it was actually a middle school and a high school student. And if we were school choice for middle school, they would actually both get to stay, and they'd both be charged a school choice assessment, even though the other student was a high school student. Wasn't within our catch basin of kids who could stay, but that student would be allowed to stay as well because their sibling would be accepted as school choice.
So some of this will change some when we talk again next time, but between what Brad presented and what Scott just put on, is there anything anybody wants to ask now or put up there now from the slides or the school choice discussion?
You answered my questions. I had some and you answered them all, so,
Yeah.
Okay.
so far.
School choice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question about using the sped reserve as this being our first time using it since its creation. Is the mechanism there in the way it was voted in town meeting to use it for that, to transfer that into regular budgetary items and move the other money back to circuit breaker?
So the only thing that would really hit that is the fact that it's used for new expenses. And that's what it would be used for. We had 300 grand worth of new expenses that we were anticipating that money would go to offset the budget. And that would really be it for the use of it.
300 in special education.
Yeah,
It's
special
all sped,
ed,
yeah.
okay, all right.
Yep.
And I don't know if this was sorry. I don't know if this was a question. It wasn't really a question, but I know that the last time I saw the numbers in terms of the warrant article for free cash, and Mr. Dunham might have that number better than I have, is that right now I think the proposal on the table would be to replenish that sped reserve fund at I believe $37,000 for next year. So it would not be able to be built back up to the $200,000 that was there this year.
Correct.
When it was coming around for school choice, the last thing I think to put it to bed, for me personally, I don't want to envision the kids as a number. So what I would really like when you bring it to us, if you could have some direct other superintendents, just the impact that the students have had in their district that have done this. So as we're seeing, not only, I don't want to look at them as a dollar figure. I'd like to see just how it is, what it is brought to their district. Is that possible? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't get into individual students.
Yeah,
and-
I'm kind of. You might want to go a little more on that one.
But I think what
What I'm trying to say is that, let's say, a 5-year impact. Let's use an Abington, for example. If they've done this, how has it been helpful to their school? Has it been a negative to the school? I'd like to hear from them rather than looking at it and just saying
Yes.
that they do it. Does that make sense?
I think
You alluded to that a little bit.
yeah, and I can get more detailed information on that. So yes, I have already had conversations with a couple of the superintendents on that list who are local, who have said that school choice from their perspective has been a positive.
And and that's just something going forward when you do present it. I will ask that question. So I was just
Yeah,
to
give
put
it
it
a
to bed, I just wanted to bring it up. As far as the special ed, the only question I had was, I think you were mentioning FY18 and the number, and then I'm just running quick math. Was it about a 40% differential over what you had projected to what it ended up? Am I about right?
300 grand, yeah. around
Okay.
that.
Why? I guess just.
That's actually going to get into Karen's presentation.
Okay,
So
sorry.
Karen's going to give a detailed, specific presentation on special education.
Okay.
So we can go through that piece of it and then take some questions specifically into the special education budget.
No problem. Okay.
I want to keep in mind the presentation that we did for my purposes, 9,000 series includes special ed, vocational, and collaborative education.
Okay.
So Karen's really talks about more specifically just the special ed out of district component of that.
Anybody else?
Aaron, I
before
jumped
she-
it. I'm sorry. I
That's
jumped
okay.
it. I
Before-
apologize.
Before she moves on, though, anything else from anyone? All set? Okay.
So and I just want to clarify too that I'm actually talking about the out of district special ed budget, which is the biggest number, but it's such a small piece of special ed, so that's sometimes like hard for me because there's so much more to special ed and all the services that are provided than this little piece. Even though it's a big fiscal piece, it's small in terms of like all the stuff that we do in district. But this will clarify some of that out of district special ed cost numbers. And I just had a couple reminders that, like I just said, what we're talking about here is a very small piece of special ed services, and that close to 20% of Carver students receive some kind of specialized education services. So 1 in 5 students in this district
You can't open it up.
No.
do receive some kind of special ed services.
No,
We'll get it to you.
sorry.
The out-of-district tuitions we're focused on this presentation affect less than 5% of those students with IEPs, and that's less than 1% of our student population. And also, we are go ahead, Meredith. We are talking about kids that have significant needs when we're talking about these out-of-district tuitions, and the fiscal piece is important, but most of them are kids with significant needs.
You can try it again. Just share it with us.
So this is there's the top number there, the top row there is what was reported, what Brad just showed for the 9,000 series, comparing this year's budget with next year's projected budget. That did, like Brad just said, that included, and that changed some since last school committee report, but that did include the agricultural schools and other things outside of special ed. So the second row there is just the special ed tuitions for this year and projected for next year. Those are the numbers that are in the operational budget. The thing that happens though is those numbers each year are offset by certain amounts of circuit breaker or other monies. And usually what we see are the operational numbers after the offsets have happened. And we compare those numbers and look at a percentage difference. But the amount of money that was offset is usually different from year to year. So the numbers that we're actually like comparing aren't truly, they're real numbers, but they're not like, it's not apples and apples. They've been offset by different numbers, so the comparisons can look really different. So in the operational budget, it looks like a 52% increase. This year, actually, the circuit breaker's pretty even, actually, the offsets. So in the actual cost, when we look at the actual cost on that bottom line, it is, still a fairly big percentage. So that's a 38% increase. The other thing that happened was the FY18 budget was projected to be lower than what it's going to come out to be at the end of this year. And so I'll show some other slides that really show the actuals over a bunch of years. So we think that every year special ed costs are increasing, special ed tuition costs are increasing. They are increasing, but our costs, the money that we pay out for special ed tuitions has actually stayed relatively constant for many years. It's the way we show those numbers that makes that percent increase.
Well, you've worked hard to move a lot of things in District 2 over the past.
And we have, and part of what makes this hard is, even though we're just looking at the fiscal numbers, and even if we understand all this, if the perception out there to special ed parents and the perception out there to teachers that are working hard to build the capacity to be able to support kids in district, if they feel like they're doing all that and then all they ever hear is, but it keeps increasing, our out-of-district tuitions keep increasing, that's hard for them. And the reality is it's not really increasing, but the impact to the budget, depending on how we offset it, sometimes does. And I'll show that a little bit more in the next slide.
So I think, before I go back one for a second, sorry. I think Andrew's question was, the operational budget last year, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the operational budget for last year was proposed at $620,831. And we're saying the actual cost was $883,514 for this year. And your question was
It's actually gonna be more.
it's gonna be more than that.
It comes up with
Next slide. But his question is why is that?
Yeah, so if we go to a couple more
Okay,
slides.
we'll get that one.
And on this next slide, I promised Brad I'd go over this quickly, because this is before he came, but this is why the impact is so important to me that people understand this. So it's been year after year that we've seen these comparisons, and sometimes they've been more accurate than others. But there was a year, that year between FY14 and 15, where the numbers were shown to be that top line is the operating budget. So let's say they're saying in FY14, the hit to the operating budget was 581,000. And the hit to and then they were predicting the 15 budget to be 1,400,000. And that was like 150,000% increase. But the first number, the FY14 budget, that was a number that was offset by a lot of circuit breaker and other offsets. So the real number there was 1,300,000. It had just been, that was the real cost. It had just been offset by a whole lot of other things. And they compared it to the number that was the real cost without any offsets. And then those offsets were taken at the very end of the budget presentation. But it made, so the real increase was 10%, but it made the increase in special ed look to be as large as 147%. So if we don't understand those numbers and the differences in offsets, we can have like really skewed looking numbers that can really not tell the right story to people that aren't in the budget world, you know.
But just to clarify, that we do
Go on.
everything comparatively year to year. For the last 2 years, it's been
Yes.
apples to apples. This is past on how it was presented.
But if we don't understand those offsets, it's sometimes difficult if we compare numbers that way.
So is the one that we just looked at comparing the offsets correctly?
Well, so I would say they're real numbers, but still, if you're looking at different, like the original number that came up.
Next slide. Everything you want to know is on the next slide.
I know, but if we're comparing and we're adding in ag schools but the takeaway is that it's special ed cost, I mean, that makes a difference. And if the budget, if we're still comparing numbers after circuit breaker's been offset, then we're not comparing like numbers. So if we compare them after circuit breaker, now the one for this year, circuit breaker is pretty similar, so then it's going to be more accurate. So if we look at the next slide, Meredith, if you can look at the next slide. So this shows the operational budget for FY17, what we predicted for this year originally, what we're thinking it's going to come out to be, and and next year. So on that top line is the impact to the operational budget. On the second line is how much circuit breaker was taken off of the total cost. I actually like to go from the total cost and go up. So if you look at the total cost on the bottom, those are the real tuition costs, the money that we're paying out to schools. So in FY17 it was 1,300,000, but we offset it with circuit breaker at almost 500,000, so the cost to the district was 893. This year, we predicted 870,000. We offset that by 250, so the cost to the budget was 620. We have had some unexpected things happen, and we've had to add extra money for this year. So we're going to end up this year, we're predicting at 1,130,000. So that's going to be our actual tuition cost. Compared to next year, we're predicting the 1,200,000. The reason for that, I mean, sometimes I can predict those numbers better than others. I didn't do a good job on this year's prediction. And there was some increases in, sometimes if you try to predict too early, there's a lot of things that happen in the year. And so there's tuition increases.
Yeah, so a little bit of a negative of April town meeting in our budget process. So some of these numbers come out after April town meeting in terms of, so we got some budget increases in terms of our district tuitions, as Brad mentioned, Pilgrim Area Collaborative. So those came out after our budget was passed.
And then we had 3 students probably, I think, that went out like over the summer that were just not on the radar. So between those 3 and the extra tuition increases, that kind of made that extra like 200,000.
But that ties back to the sped reserve piece. So the number there is about 300,000, as Brad said. We can justify, we can document 300,000 of unexpected special ed costs. And so we're asking the town to offset those costs by the $200,000 in the sped reserve.
So,
Which would make us use less circuit breaker, allow us to carry more circuit breaker over next year, allow us to offset our budget by that amount next year.
But if you look across the total cost and take away the the optimistic underestimated of the original this year. Those numbers are like relatively,
Comparable.
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, the number from where we're probably going to end up at the end of this year to next year's predicted number is only a 7.5% increase. And the number for next year compared to FY17 is actually a 13% decrease.
So those numbers like just presented right there in the predicted column don't, like they're $60,020 off, right? The 1130.
Predicted FY18 to FY19.
If you look at the predicted column from bottom to top, if you take the 1,130,000 with the 450,000, it doesn't come out the same.
So we made adjustments, we might not have like got that exactly right.
Math on it doesn't add up.
No.
Oh, you're doing 4.
870,000 plus 200,000 is only 1070, but you're saying 1130 is the amount.
So that 200,000 number that's been added as an extra adjustment is an estimate. So, I mean, it may be a little bit, it may end up being more than that. The project, that's definitely still a predicted, so.
Are you
that was
talking
just-
the
we made
adjustments or the total?
The adjustments and the total.
Okay.
So we were just recently like going over the numbers again, so I probably didn't re-add them.
Okay.
So I'll fix that and send it to you.
Okay. Do you see what I mean yet?
I see what you mean.
Okay, I see it.
Okay.
But bottom line is we look at the total cost, and if I look all the way back until like FY10, FY10, I think the numbers were at like $1,500,000. So that range from like $1,500,000 down to around this $1,300,000, $1 million. It's all like that's the range that's been fairly constant in terms of the cost.
Well, I don't know if I would call it more realistic, but I definitely appreciate the approach that you're giving it right now.
Meredith's gonna get.
Next slide.
So this just shows it as a more of a visual. So that's FY15 to FY19. The actual out-of-district cost money that we've paid. Don't take any circuit breaker out. Don't take anything out. These are the costs of out-of-district. And that FY18 number right there is what we think it's gonna be, not what we projected at the beginning of the end of last year. So this one helps show that circuit breaker impact. So circuit breakers meant to kind of help you adjust the impact to your operational budget. So the red's the impact to the operational budget, and the blue's the circuit breaker. If you can slide that blue, what you want is to have a fund of money, circuit breaker, which is what Brad's trying to say we need to build back up. Because if you have that fund, you can slide that blue line up and down a little bit so that you can make your impact to your operational budget stay more constant and not cause a lot of situations in your budget, where you have to adjust. So if you can change that blue line, then it changes how much it's hitting on the red line. So those are the real numbers at the top where the lines are hitting at the top, but that blue line impacts how big the red is.
And we voted on this, and we knew this scenario was coming with the circuit breaker when we do that. And we did that to compensate for the 1.2 that we had to try and make up without losing as few positions as possible.
Yeah, it's a fine line, because you don't want to have too much of a buffer there and let go people, because you want that buffer, but at the same time you don't want to end up with all of a sudden having costs that you can't
With no buffer to catch it, right?
Right, and over those, obviously that my first year as superintendent, the year we had the shortfall, we ate into a lot of our circuit breaker, but we also ate into it the previous, actually year or two prior to that.
Yes, we did.
We used circuit breaker beyond what was the original projection as an offset. So that process had been happening over a couple of years, where the circuit breaker fund was at the point where at the end of last year we were somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 as what was left in circuit breaker, which is not a great place for a school district to be in, based on that could be one out of district placement.
And if you just look at between the FY16, the total cost of out of district tuitions was higher than what we're looking at for FY15, but the cost to the operating budget was less because more circuit breaker was used.
The goal of circuit breaker that we're trying to hit again is to have 1 year to the good.
Yep.
So what happens is when they cut it down to 65% this year, we have a hard number that we didn't have to use. That's what we can actually offset our budget by because we know we have it. You don't have to worry about the state cutting from, project 75 and only get funded 65. You have that number to the good and you keep rolling that over year to year to year.
Right.
But until you build back up to those levels, we're scraping to get by.
Well, I think to that point Karen made, and you made also, that it allows us to be more constant and understanding in what we're doing because those fluctuations we don't have to worry about them as much.
Right.
Next slide.
So just in terms of the number of students in out-of-district schools, so we do have continued to see our kind of decline. That yellow line between like 15 and 20 is where I would say is a goal that should be a reasonable goal. The state has a goal of no more than 5% of students in out-of-district schools. And we're at about that 4 to 5% if we stay within that 15 to 20. We did start to see our numbers go up a little bit, and that's when we created that alternative high school program for this year, which is, I think, working well for making sure that kids have a place to be that works for them in Carver Middle High School instead of needing kind of that alternative placement. And then the little jump from, this year to next year, we did have 3 situations where students are already in out-of-district schools and one parent has moved to Carver. So parents have either separated or something's happened. And if students are in private out-of-district schools and parents are in 2 towns, the towns split the cost of the private school. So even if they've already been placed there by another district and one parent moves here, we're now responsible for half of the cost of that. And
The
we've
kids
never
didn't move
had
here,
that since I've been
one
here,
of
and
their
now we have
parents
3.
moved there. And we had 3 of those this year.
That come in that we'll have to be responsible for next year. We weren't responsible for this year, but we will. So that's really, that jump right there is really what that is. And then the cost of tuition, even though what we've spent has stayed pretty, fairly stable, the cost of schools is skyrocketing. So really, we haven't gone. You would think if we would be increasing, but by keeping level, it really means we're decreasing because the cost has certainly gone up. The current range of tuition prices is $37,000 a year to $220,000 per student per year. In 2010, our average district cost per student was $50,000, and in 2018, our average cost per student is $86,000. So that's actually a 65% increase for our per student cost. And this is an explanation of circuit breaker. So when I do circuit breaker, you look at the cost of any student in district or out of district that has any student that has special ed costs over a foundation amount, which is set by the state. The foundation amount last year that was set by the state was $43,000. So any student that had special ed costs over $43,000, we could apply for reimbursement. So then they take that $43,000 off of whatever you've spent, and whatever's left over, that's what you get the either 60 to 75% reimbursement on. So so you can see there, like a student that had a tuition of $46,000. By the time you take off foundation, that's $3,000 to $4,000 that you can claim, and then it's just going to be 60 to 75% of that we're getting back, depending on what the state sets as that percentage rate. But that is also applied. We do have several in-district students that either between all the services they have, as we develop more in-district programs that have intensive services, those kids actually are qualifying for some reimbursement too. So we do look at, like, if they have lots of therapies, one-to-one aids, certain kind of equipment, all those things can be reimbursed. So the other purpose of circuit breaker is also to even out when we make placement decisions for kids, to kind of even it out so you're not too focused on the fiscal and you're putting the student in the right place, not the pressure of the difference in the fiscal, the cost of the programs. So these are just two examples. If you have a student whose tuition is 120,000, you take all the circuit breaker pieces off, and your the final cost after reimbursement to us is 64,000. And then a student's tuition in a school that's 60,000, you take the circuit breaker amounts, reimburse them, and the final cost is 49,000. So instead of a difference of 60 to 120, you got a difference of like 50 to 64,000 between the two placements. So that's just another purpose of circuit breaker. I don't know if you have any questions or if that answered your questions.
It was a great presentation. Thank you for clarifying some of those
Yep.
issues I had. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Karen, when we talk about the tuition, I hate looking at the kids with a dollar. It stinks. But how do you make the decision where they end up getting aligned? And is that do you have to look at it as a dollar as far as where they go?
No, so I mean
has a different tuition to it.
that's really an IEP team meeting decision.
Okay.
And the guidelines are that it's always least restrictive, which means you first look at your collaboratives if that's appropriate for the student, and you also look at schools that are closest to so even distance matters. You look at schools that are closest to your town, and then you just have to look at, different schools specialize in different kinds of disabilities, so it has to be the right kind of match for the need of the student.
And I'm not putting you to the dollar, but like how big are the swings as far as what we're looking at in tuition?
Yeah, so they're big. They're 37,000 for some. That's probably the bottom end now for collaboratives. Whereas all the collaboratives used to be about in the 20s, and now you're looking at some collaboratives in the 50s. But probably the lowest collaborative tuition right now is like 37,000. And then your residential schools, your 365-day residential schools are up can be up at the max of like $220,000 a year.
Thank you.
Karen, this is one of the most fluctuating, flexible parts of this, and thank you so much for your dedication to this town and what you do to be here and take your time and help us get through this. So I appreciate your presentation very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
All right, so that concludes our budget presentations for this evening. So I don't know if there's any additional questions or are we ready to move on?
No, we can move on.
All right, Walter. So Walter's here to present a update on our monthly school building report. So we bring Walter in every now and then, just to kind of give us an update on where we stand on the elementary school project.
Closer, Walter.
Getting closer. Yep.
It's getting really close. It's getting really close.
Yep.
So
Almost no days.
when Meredith's gonna pull up the building report for us.
Yep. So
That'd be great.
they're all on the town website under the building project as well. So if anyone wants to go look at them.
So if you want to just hit some key highlights for us of what's been going on in the project, what's the big things that have been happening, and maybe where we stand in terms of cost and contingency and those pieces, that'd be great.
Yep. So schedule wise, substantial completion still on target for phase 1, June 22nd. So that's almost 73% of phase 1. We'll reset that for phase 2, which has a substantial completion date of November 30th, and that's demo and abatement, parking lot and fields. So that's all on track right now. Budget wise, right now we've approved the December rec, so that's gone out. We're in the process of, we just got the final rec for January. That's not in this because we just got it today, but it's about 1.7 million for the month of January for work put in place. So that brings us up to a little over 70% construction wise. So we're right on target there with budget and schedule. No safety incidents to report. We've really hammered out a lot of issues over there. I think this month what you'll start seeing on the exterior of the building is a lot of the zinc going up. Roofer was here today taking some measurements. They have all the zinc at the shop. They have a lot of the zinc at the school in general. Let's see.
That's gonna make a difference.
Yeah, it definitely is. No big schedule milestones hit in the last couple months, but the drywall gymnasium is one of the next ones we were tracking on here. HVAC rooftop startups, probably looking anytime from now till mid-March, late March. Let's see. Right now we've expended 1.66 million I'm sorry, that's what we have remaining. We've expended.
I was gonna say what happened, man.
Yeah, we've expended
Where'd that
300. Sorry, 308 actually, and we have a pending change order 9, that's going to bring us up to about 350, which is about 1% of construction, which is very, very good at this point in the project. Saves a lot. Phase 2 is where we'd expect to see the most unknowns. Demoing and building, obviously. So, we're in great shape with those. We're looking at about 65 guys on site per day. I know it doesn't look like that because they're all inside the building, but there's a ton of trade work going on inside that building. The resilient floors are in A-wing. All the classrooms, they're all protected. The hallways, the lockers are in. A-wing is grade 5 and grade 2. Stacked on top of each other.
And Meredith, you scroll down a little bit, there's a couple pictures.
Yep. So the top picture right there is actually one of the classrooms. The field color is on the left of it, and the accent color is covered up by protection. The picture on the right is millwork at the cafeteria for trash, recycle, and waste and paper. Yep. They painted the cafeteria ceiling. The operable partition is now in between the multi-purpose room and the cafeteria. The stage platform is being subfloor is going on now. We're looking to get wood deliveries probably at the end of March. That would be for both the platform and the gym, so those are going to be looking to go in pretty soon. The translucent wall panel systems are complete at this time. We have one window that we got to replace. It's a small one. Just the seal was bad on it, so that's being replaced. We've been doing a lot of window testing. Most of the bathroom floors are in, and drywall is just about complete through the entire building, so we're really moving along. Doors are all in, hardware's all in A-wing.
And so when you go in that A-wing, which is on the street side of the building, you walk down those 2 hallways and it looks like a pretty finished building.
Yep. Yep. And trying to think, we're working with GGD and Point Line Space, who are the FF&E and IT designers. They have put the furniture package out on the street, I believe.
They have, so the furniture pack.
The IT has not gone out yet.
No.
We're looking to do a mock-up for one of the projectors in one of the classrooms. So we're waiting on that. Trying to think anything else big we have.
No, I think that's a good summary in
Yeah.
terms of where we stand. So we continue to move along, on time, on budget. I always think it's good just to. We don't look at this report every single month, but I think it's good every now and then to
Yep.
take a little more detailed look at the monthly building report as part of our meeting, and then give people the opportunity to ask some questions. And I want to continue to just reinforce that I think both PMA and HMFH, the architects, have been just outstanding to work with. The PMA crew with Walter and Chad and John have just been outstanding. Obviously we don't see Chris Carroll all the time anymore, but they've just been a great group of guys to work for. And what they've really done is they've done an outstanding job of looking out for the interests of this committee, of the school building committee, and of the town. They've just really been outstanding that way in terms of managing and overseeing this project. And then just tremendously supportive of us as we have any questions. I feel like anything I bring up, I get an immediate response. They get right back to me. We're all working collaboratively on the project. Steven's here. He's going to come up later and talk about phones a little bit. But Steven's been working with a lot of them on the technology package, and both groups, both HMFH and PMA, have just been outstanding to work for in terms of supporting the town. And CTA is building a good building.
Yep, absolutely. So we had 2 snow days, so
That's it.
That built in, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, we had the power day too. We had the power. Day.
I'm counting one of them as a snow day.
So
Yeah, we're working to get the movers in day the school closes, move everything over, and then they'll be able to get in there.
That opening and closing ceremony, we're meeting tomorrow night too, actually.
yeah,
So
we have a meeting tomorrow night about
yeah,
opening and closing ceremonies.
setting those up. So.
And I think our goal in March is to kind of give you an update on the plan for moving.
Yeah.
So as an agenda item for March, we want to put on just kind of give everybody an update of what's happening for the plan for making some materials available to the community, things we're going to move out, where things are going to go. Just to kind of give. We haven't talked about that in a while. We talked a little bit in the fall, but we haven't mentioned it recently. So we want to bring that back to the committee in March.
Yep. Anyone have any questions on the construction?
Something.
Well,
Something?
I see you only use, what, 15.7% for contingency?
Yep.
Oh, that's what we. Yeah.
And potential changes, contingency use 49.02%.
Yep. So
What are some of the potential changes?
some of the big
you see?
items, yeah. So actually, a lot of the stuff is the MSBA sets certain numbers on FF&E and IT. They allocate $2,400 per student for FF&E and IT. And what we're tracking right now is an overrun that's been discussed at the building committee level and with the technical review committee. So we're tracking an overrun on FF&E and IT, and that's just based purely off that's every single town in the state gets the exact same amount, and it's up to the town whether or not they want to spend a little bit more to have a higher quality product, to have a little bit more in that school. I would say almost no district hits that $2,400 number.
And from my perspective, there's just so many people who are working so hard on this project. Ruby's done a tremendous job in terms of working with the teachers in terms of furniture, fixtures and equipment, the FF&E, and I think we're estimating we're expecting that to be. And I think we mentioned this number to the committee a couple months ago. We're expecting that to be around about $220,000 over budget from.
That one point.
From the 1,200 per student, but in my mind, Ruby advocated for, and the committee supported that. Maybe some places where we should dip into the contingency is for furnishings and for technology. So a good percentage of that projected overrun really falls in those two budget areas, and they are town requests. They're not change orders. They're not mistakes or
no
that's happening on the project. It's
we're actually I can give you an update on that. We're about I want to say 0.8% of the 0.8% of changes are design issues, which is once you get above 5%, you're looking at issues, but if you're below 3%. You have some pretty tight drawings, and that's just all credit goes to HMFH on that. And their engineers.
They're fantastic.
They've done a great job with those.
They listened very well, man, through this whole process. Both companies have heard what this town needed. They've helped support that thoroughly. Chris may not have been around, but in the beginning
he was around all the time. Yep.
He was going out to the motor home. We were everywhere in the community, and he was very involved in all that. You've all been, and through this whole process they've been. So
yeah, so a lot of that 49% is stuff that's really gonna increase the longevity and increase the productivity of a lot of those products and stuff that the people in the town feel should be in that building. Okay. So
that bid opening actually is next week too. It's next Tuesday already. So
for the furniture,
we'll be able to put a hard number on that and really see where we're at, but. Being able to have only expended that much contingency right now, we're looking at about I think less than 150,000 in construction changes that we're tracking right now. So a lot of that number is the betterments that we're seeing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else?
No, I'm good.
Walter, thank you very much.
all right, thank you very much, Walter.
Appreciate the time very much.
And moving on to the middle high school field project. So on Wednesday, January 31st, the Track and Field Study Committee and the Community Preservation Committee held a joint public hearing on the project. I'm going to give you a quick review of the design plan that's going to go to the voters at town meeting if approved by CPC. At this time, the breakdown of the cost of the project are as follows. The total cost projected right now is $4,142,689. The Community Preservation Committee's share of that total cost would be $3,225,000. The town's share of the total cost would be $917,689. As proposed, the project would not increase the taxes of Carver residents if approved at town meeting. The goal is that the project's going to go out to bid prior to town meeting. So when the town does vote on it, they'll be voting on a real number, on a final number of a project that's been come back and bidded. The next meeting of the Field Study Committee is this Thursday at 5 p.m., February 15th. And the goal actually, and I'll do a very short presentation tonight, the goal of that, one of the goals of the joint meeting is that we'll kind of have a joint presentation about the project. So the Field Study Committee is going to meet from 5 to 6. We want to have the joint meeting begin at 6 o'clock, talk about the field as a first agenda item, and have the representatives from our architects and design firm here to talk to the school committee and the board of selectmen about where we stand on the field project, and then move on with our agenda after that.
There's a point. What time is our joint meeting?
We have officially starting at 6. I think I had said to you 6:30. 6:30.
All right.
So we're starting off with a little bit of a presentation on the field project. So I will just very quickly, I have one picture that I don't have a pedestal for, but I will put it up. I have it over here. Big Vanna White. So this is our most recent design proposal. And this is something we talked about before. We put this up on the screen. We'll hit the key points of it. Andrew, anything you want to add as a member of the committee, you can do so.
Sure.
So just major design changes. First, right now we're proposing a turf field. So this will be a turf field that will be larger than the current field. It will be wide enough to have a full-size regulation soccer field. So the field's going to be widened. The track will be a brand new track. Okay? It will be 8 lanes on the straightaway, 6 on the turns, which allows you to hold any high school meet. The high school meets, they want to see the 8 lanes on the straightaway. We currently don't have 8 lanes on the straightaway. We currently only have 6. So expanding that piece of it will allow us to be open for any kind of high school track meet. A huge design change is we want to create a bus loop. So this is where the current concession stand is. The concession stand would be demolished. And we'd create a bus loop here, allowing buses to come in and enter here and stage. Right now, especially at big events like the football game, if you come to a football game on a Friday night, you're lined up in the parking lot to get into the facility. We figure that that's really a safety issue. And then also, the other safety issue is our buses often have to park in the parking lot or in front of the building. And as teams leave, they have to go through the parking lot, they have to go through the crowd. Another security issue that gets presented. Not that we've had a lot of issues with that over time, but occasionally there's been an issue where the opposing team leaving the field has had some issues in the parking lot. It's not a great setup. So one of the new design features is adding this bus loop. We'd also have 2 entrances. We'd have a spectator entrance, which would be staged a little bit farther down past the bus loop, get everybody out of the parking lot, and then we'd have a team entrance. The goal of having the 2 entrances, again, is a safety and security issue of keeping the teams separated from entering the facility from the general public. So that's a little bit of a design change from where the current field is. We'd have bleachers on one side, no bleachers on the visitor side. The proposal here is just going to be about 600 bleachers in total, and a set of 84 bleachers that will be set bleachers with a press box, a new press box. The rest of the bleachers will be portable bleachers on the side. We're going to put in the foundation, well, I shouldn't say the word foundation. We're going to run the electricity, we're going to run the water, we're going to run the utilities for a support building. At this time, we're not building a concession stand support building bathrooms. And so the current proposed project does not include a concession stand. The current proposed project includes the utilities to be put in place for a building to eventually go here that could have bathrooms and concessions. The other major design changes is, I think, covered it all. There's going to be some design changes in terms of where the long jumps are going to be. So the long and triple jump will be down this side, the high jump will be down this side. We're going to put in a pole vault if possible. Scoreboard's going to move from here to here. Those are some small design changes in terms of what's happening. That's kind of the big picture of what we're looking to do as part of the project. Andrew, I don't know if there's any pieces you want to add in?
Well, I think starting off is just it's a community project. This is not a school exclusive complex. This is to fulfill a need that the town had and work within the budget that the CPC and the town could afford. And we feel we've done that, and we fulfilled a need that the town had, and that's why we've gone in this direction. And I think that's what the committee was put together to do, and that's what we hope we've
spent a lot of time looking at turf, and the decision from the town, really, and the community was that turf was the best option that would allow total community use of the facility. So the goal is this is going to be a community complex. So we've talked about that in terms of even naming around the facility. We've agreed that all naming around the facility should be based on the concept of Carver and not the Crusaders, because it's not the Carver Middle High School Sports Complex, it's the Carver Community Complex. So even in terms of naming around the facility, we're going to use Carver and not Crusaders, because we want to say that this is Carver's facility, and we want to open this up to make sure that the entire community can use this facility.
Scott, there's a lot of talk about the turf and grass and back and forth with that, but on my time in this committee, I mean, the track has gotten to a point where we were not almost able to host events anymore because it's so
Correct.
beat up and worn out.
But at the end of last year, local schools began to contact us and said they would no longer participate in track meets at our facility because the track is so worn. It's thin, there's holes, it's unstable.
It's very dangerous.
So it's become unsafe for students to run on. The track really needed to happen. And I know, I think it's a good point to point out that there's been a lot of discussion about the football field.
Yeah, but
And the turf versus the grass, but we were at a point where this would degrade it to the point that the track really would have become unusable.
Yeah.
So something had to happen with the track. And obviously when something was happening with the track, you're not gonna do the track and not do the field.
well,
That doesn't make any sense.
When I
So
think
we
back to
the
the
whole process.
When I think back to the funding that they were talking about for the track initially and some of the estimated costs, when you're including the field and everything within this, we seem to be doing pretty good from where those costs were back then when we were looking at it.
Yeah.
Because just the track alone was going to be a huge venture just to do that.
So this is, I said, we're gonna do more of this at our joint meeting on Thursday night. Wanted to give everybody just a little bit of a flavor of a taste for it now. I don't know if there's any questions or any pieces you wanna add in, Andrew, as a member of the committee, or?
I think I just did.
Andy?
Why was the plan for the bathroom and the concession stand taken out?
It just became a cost determination. So we've had, through our discussions with CPC, through the public hearing, CPC felt there was a number that they were comfortable with in terms of being able to support. I'll address the issue that CPC was concerned, and legitimately so, concerned that they're in essence going to support a 10-year bond for this project. And as we go out to town meeting, we're going to need the community to have a 2/3 vote to bond this project over 10 years using CPC funds. They wanted to make sure that they weren't draining themselves to a position where they didn't have any other projects they could support. So in essence, the number that we've come up with, which I think is not in front of me, but it was $3,250,000.
3.2.
The 3.2 million is what CPC feels like it can fund out of what it brings in through tax base without any state match. And they're reserving the state match will be available for them going forward each year to do other projects beyond this project. So obviously that put a cost limitation on this because we didn't want to be able to, we wanted to be able to do the project, we wanted to be able to do it so that the community and CPC could support it, that CPC would still have the availability, the possibility of funding other projects beyond this project, and that we could afford without having, the goal was to do it under the levy limit, to do this project without increasing the tax burden on the Carver community. The CPC tax is already in place, people are paying that, and so that eventually gave us a budget number that we had to meet. And doing a full build out of a concession stand with bathrooms brought us over that number. So we were the original project was I think our first proposal was at 5.7 million.
Yep.
And through different discussions, through some value engineering, through the company getting some answers to some questions, they were able to bring that cost down. But we were still a little over where we wanted to be, and so then we had to say, okay, something big has to come out. The bleachers have to come out, the press box has to come out, the concession stand building has to come out. something had to come out to meet that number. And obviously, from the school's perspective, and Mr. Schultz, I think, would support me if he was here on this, we'd love to have the whole thing. And that's the best thing to do. We were pretty consistent on saying we want to see the utilities run out to this building so that the utilities are in place, so that if we're able to build that building in the future, we can do that. And hopefully in the near future. But ultimately, in our mind, that was the first thing to come off the list, and that was the school's position. It wasn't versus the bleachers or the press box, or even the changing around the design of the new entry. We thought the new entry was a positive aspect to the facility. The turf, the field, the track. Even from the school's perspective, ultimately, the concession stand was the thing that made the most sense to have to come out. If something had to come off the list to meet what was available for funding, in our mind, that was the thing that made the most sense.
So Scott, I'm trying to remember our previous conversations. Are there bathrooms there? But isn't there a certain number of bathrooms for the bleachers, or that was only if the concession was there?
Well, no, the bathroom issue, which we're going to still address, is that becomes this concept of these are portable bleachers.
Yeah.
They're technically considered portable, so that they could be removed. And if you're using portable bleachers, you don't have to meet the bathroom requirements. So though they are going to be fixed in place bleachers, we're not going to be looking to move them anytime soon. But they could be moved. They could be transported. They're not solid. And that's a bad phrase. They are solid, but they're portable. They can be moved. They could be taken off this facility and brought to the baseball field.
So the solution.
We're not going to do that per se.
Right.
But that could happen.
But the solution then is either porta potties or the school. Is that?
For the beginning piece, yes.
Right.
Which is our current structure. There's currently not bathrooms in that facility.
Right.
But ultimately, yes, we'd have to do. I mean, ultimately, from my position, is now if this project is done and approved and goes forward, and we start, if it's approved at town meeting, we're going to begin construction this spring, and this will happen over the summer. We actually have a target. We already have. I think the timeline. I think it's like September 23rd is the planned opening of the facility. So this facility will be done and open on next fall. Then we'll start moving forward and having discussions about what are we going to do to get this building here and get a couple bathrooms and a concession stand there. And I think that would be suitable. Two bathrooms, 4 bathrooms, maybe 2, with the concession stand would be an appropriate building out there. And then we have to decide how we're going to fund that and how we're going to support that. Jenna, is there any excitement about this discussion at all? How much do students know this is happening?
Yeah.
A lot of people are just like talking about going to the meeting to get people to support it. But no, I've heard some debate about the turf versus grass, but everyone's more excited about the track, just getting something new for that. So people are really excited about it.
So it's a good vibe.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Sure.
On the team entrance, yes, that one. And down below the public entrance, is there room for a vehicle to get through? I imagine on the top one, but in the bottom one?
Both. So this is designed so that emergency vehicles could enter either loop. It's hard to tell by the drawing from scale here, but it's actually, that wasn't this question. So it is designed so that an ambulance could enter from either side.
I'm just thinking about vandalism. Are there plans?
We're thinking about ambulances.
Well, my question was about putting a gate up for times when the field is not used to keep
this.
any.
Oh, this is going to be a gated facility. It's hard to say here, but this is going to be fenced.
Okay.
We actually had a discussion about that. There was a little bit of discussion early on about maybe taking the fence out of the project. Like when we started talking about removing things, there's well, maybe we could take the fencing out and do the building. And we said, no, the school's perspective was taking the fencing out wasn't a good idea. Right. We need to have this as an enclosed facility for when you have an event like a football game or protecting the field. So yes, it's hard to tell on this drawing and you're kind of far away from it, but this will be totally fenced with gates.
So the big gates. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm glad ambulances can get down there.
That's right. I wasn't trying to say you didn't want ambulances to get down.
I thought he was looking for a place to stand and heckle the opponents as they walked in. That's what I was thinking. But
any other questions at this time?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. John's got a question.
How much would a concession stand actually be?
So the building that we have spec'd out right now would be a drop building where they'd actually be pre-constructed, it'd be pre-construction to come in, and the number that they're giving us through this project is $285,000. You know, it could vary depending on what type of building you want to build, how big the building is. So I think legitimately for our planning going forward, you know, you should think $250,000 to $300,000 to put a building on top of that.
Could we look for, a grant or a corporate sponsor for something like that?
Eventually, yeah, absolutely.
She's a go-getter.
All right.
The other thing which we're going to be doing the other night, I mean Thursday night as part of our first meeting, we're going to be going and identifying ad alternates. I'm going to make a proposal that the building is an ad alternate, which would be if, say, the budget for some reason the project came in way under bid. I'm not expecting that to happen, but say all of a sudden, you know, they're expecting it to be 4.1 million, and all of a sudden someone comes in and says, "I'm going to build what you want for 3.2." I don't think that's going to happen. But say someone did that, then we'd have an ad alternate to add a concession stand in if it came in under bid.
Okay.
But I wouldn't put a lot of hope into that.
Was there any more talk about the advertising, local businesses, like selling advertising space on the fence?
We have not talked about this in terms of this specific project, but that's something you could look for as a funding mechanism
For
going forward
yeah.
for the concession stand.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanna.
No, thank you. I thought I had 40 to put it on.
I'm gonna buy a vowel.
All right,
Phone systems.
Stephen, thank you very much for your patience. Maybe I should have pulled you up in the agenda too.
I was thinking about that with
Yeah. We should have maybe redesigned it.
maybe move him up if he's given.
I'll apologize to Walter when I see him Thursday.
Good evening.
I'll apologize to Steve right now.
Oh,
So let me give you, I'll just give you a little bit of background on this before Stephen begins to talk about it.
The whole night.
Yeah, so as I'm sure most of you know, Stephen is our townwide technology director. And the school district's been struggling with inconsistent phone service over the past few months, resulting in not having at times any phone service in or out of our buildings. We've been working to try to diagnose the problem. Stephen's really been working hard to figure out what the problem is and what are our possible solutions. So tonight he's going to talk to you about that a little bit and go through what our concerns are and what we're going to do to try to alleviate the concerns we've been having. Interestingly enough, it's been about, I shouldn't say this, but it's, knock on wood, it's been about a month since we've lost our phone service.
oh, don't say that. Now we're going to be in
Tomorrow morning we'll have no phones.
Yes.
I wanted to bring it to the school committee just because you should know what's been happening, but I also want to address it through the community because we had some stretches where all of a sudden phones were down for 2 days, and obviously that's problematic. It's not acceptable. So there's both a short-term and a long-term solution for what's going to happen here, and Stephen's going to kind of take us through that.
Sure. Yeah. So we've had a pretty large issue with the phone system. It's been going on for a while, but it seems to be getting a lot worse, especially this year. So obviously, parts of the community have noticed that when they call the school, they're getting no signal or a busy line or something like that. And the issue is that in Carver, the community does not have fiber lines. So we have Verizon copper, or what they call plain old telephone service. The copper lines are no longer maintained by the phone company, so they've deteriorated over the years. They've been out in the street. Verizon refuses to repair them. It's their corporate policy. Their solution that they recommended to the school was to put in essentially like a wireless cell phone system on the exterior of the building, but the issue is that we don't actually have good cellular service in the schools. So that doesn't work for us. So we've been trying to figure out what exactly can we do. Typically what's been happening is the phones will go out, we'll notice that, very early in the morning, we'll call Verizon Repair, they'll show up maybe that day, maybe 2 days later. We just keep calling every hour or two, and eventually somebody comes out, they issue a temporary repair, and then the issue comes back up the next time it rains or snows or there's any sort of inclement weather. So what we've come up with as a solution is to switch over to a system called Voice over IP. So what that will actually do is take our phone service out of these dead lines in the street, and we'll use our internet pipeline to provide voice service for the school district. The only downside in doing this is that it does decrease the bandwidth available for internet access. So this is a temporary issue until we have funding to increase bandwidth next year. But I think it's a worthwhile trade-off because we should see a significant improvement in the functionality of the phones.
So you're saying next year we wouldn't be looking for that fiber option, it would be just to increase the bandwidth and keep it with the system that you're looking at now?
It's kind of like a hybrid approach. So we have some fiber lines that are being updated. We actually currently have an internet pipeline from Comcast that will provide us that ability. The only issue is that some of the school users, students and staff may see a slight decrease in speed because we have to prioritize phone calls over the network. But the good news is this is a solution that we can implement fairly quickly. We actually have technicians on site Thursday to start the preliminary work, and we're expecting it to be done the week of March 4th. So all of this work is basically a reprogramming of our system. A technician will come out on site, and all this work will be done off hours, so it shouldn't happen during the school day at all. There should be very minimal downtime even outside of the school hours, maybe just a few minutes as we make adjustments here and there. Once we do so, all the phone numbers will stay the same. The lines and extensions for all the folks in the district will stay exactly as they are now. Should be very transparent. Honestly, nobody should really notice a difference aside from the fact that the phones will work when it rains.
Can you talk a little bit about the long-term solution in terms of the fiber loop and what we're doing town-wide as part of the new school building project?
Right. Yeah, so as part of the new school building project, we have a new municipal fiber loop being put in. What that does is it connects all of the buildings, in both the school district and some of the town buildings, including town hall, the library, and fire, and so on. These buildings will actually be connected with a new municipal fiber loop. As part of that, in the elementary school, we have a new server room, which is where all of our phone systems are going to be placed, and that'll be effective as of next school year. Once that comes in, we should see all of our systems operating on one line with redundant connections, so we should be able to completely eliminate these issues with the phone system.
And the only other piece I'd add is right now for our temporary solution until the new school opens next year is that our current system does not have backup electricity. It's not on a generator. So if we were to lose power, we would lose phones. We're under the old copper lines. If you lose power, you don't lose phones.
That's right.
But we figured that trade-off is worth it. And it's temporary. We're not going to add it to the generator. Obviously, that's something that could happen, but we're not going to do that because when the new school opens in July, the head end's going to be at the new school, and that whole system's on the back of the generator.
On generator, right.
So that will only be, the losing phones during losing power will only be an issue from March 4th until the end of the school year. And
we do have a power conditioner that we'll be putting in the middle high school, so that if there's spikes in power or a minute where the power goes out, we shouldn't lose the phones. In addition to that, law does require that we maintain some of these copper lines. So I believe we have to have 2 per building. That's for things like elevators or backup 911 calls to go out, in case the power out or something like that. So we will still have those as well.
So this fiber loop is funded already?
it's going to be funded through the new building project.
What's the one-time cost for this project for the March 1?
It's very minimal. I think the labor cost, the estimate is around $2,500 or so.
$3,000 was the PO.
It was $3,000.
And actually, this allows us to change our Verizon bill to, it cuts it down right around $600 a month, switching over to this type of system. So that'll help as well. Quick return on investment.
Yeah, very quick return.
As long as the power doesn't go up.
Sounds like a good temporary solution.
Yeah.
Yep. So I just want to really bring the committee and the community up to date. I'm sure there was some periods of frustration. I know right before the holiday break, we had a little stretch of several days in a row, and I think over a 2 or 3 week span, maybe there were 5 or 6 days where we didn't have phones. So that obviously becomes problematic, and it becomes a safety issue within the school. On each of those days, there were a couple things that happened, not in terms of student safety, but just in terms of communications, where having phone communications in the school system,
It's vital.
not having them was a real detriment in terms of being able to communicate with parents, and so it's just not acceptable for us not to have reliable phone systems. And I want to thank Steven. Actually, Steven spent a lot of time with Verizon and trying to troubleshoot this problem and solve this problem, and then really make a comprehensive solution that made sense both in the short term, financially and operationally. And then also, Steven's also done all the work in terms of, along with PMA, in terms of the fiber loop for the new building project that's going to bring us all together as a town and as school buildings. So Steven's done a lot of that work. So he's done a great job leading this project.
Thank you.
Steve, I have 2 questions actually on this. On the temporary system, will any updates in software or anything like that interrupt phone service?
No, it shouldn't. No, we shouldn't have any issues with that. All the work that's going to be done is off hours, just a few minutes of downtime. It's mostly reprogramming the system that we have. That system was installed back in 2012, I believe, so it can be upgraded to work with the digital phone lines.
Okay. And my other question is, the fiber loop of the new building said it's going to have many redundant systems, safeguards in it, but it's all going to be located in one
Building.
In the same room?
Well, so you have a connection that goes out to the elementary building and then one that comes out of the middle high school. So you essentially have 2 lines. So if one of them were to fail, it moves over to the other one automatically.
But where is the other one?
The middle high school. So we have.
Oh, okay. So it's not in the same exact area. I'm just thinking
That's correct.
if something happened to that room, water damage or, God forbid, a fire or something, piece of equipment in that room, we'd lose the whole system.
Right. No, that will not be the case. We're moving over to a town-wide system. The hope is to combine services with the town and the school district. So, if something breaks in any one of these buildings, it just automatically goes over to the other one.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Steven, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
All right.
God, I'll take this one
Go
real
ahead.
quick. All right. The school committee protocols, if hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at that. I'd actually like to sort of maybe push any discussion we have on that to the next meeting. But I think this was kind of, I touched base with Scott where this is something that we created. I believe it was in one of our...
It was not this past fall, the fall before. We met with Dorothy Presser over a couple meetings, and with our work with Dorothy, we developed these protocols, and I think the committee approved them in the fall of 2016.
16, yeah. And I think, this is something that we should set as a plan to review every May when any new members may come to the committee, just to touch base on that. But I also think in case anybody has any comments, questions, or things they might like to change on that, we could make sort of May that time to address it properly and effectively, making sure everybody understands. But I think if, instead of spending some time tonight, because we still got a couple things to do, the executive session, if you want to at least look it over, make sure it's still to what we thought it was, and if you agree with everything, and if anybody has any comments, we can put it on for a quick discussion next meeting.
Okay.
Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So moving on to recommendations from the superintendent.
We did Kyle Miller, so it's just the 8th grade field trip to Canby Lake Park on June 9th.
I'll make a motion to
Eighth grade trip.
approve the grade A trip to Canby Lake Park.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions at all? No? All those in all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. We've done the recreation committee, so moving to reports from the school committee.
James, can I just mention one thing before we go? I had mentioned to you at one point about a personal request to do some touring with Scott over the next month or so. So I wanted to open up, didn't really pop into any of the things, the agenda so far, so I just wanted to mention that to the other school committee members. If that opportunity came up in your schedules, I was going to see if I could figure out a time in mind to kind of do some touring with Scott, see the classrooms and kind of see the day-to-day. So I was going to see if I could take a day and do that. So I just wanted to open that up through James to the rest of the committee.
When I joined this committee, Liz walked me through every room of every building. That was when we were looking at the elementary school and trying to redesign and looking at what was happening at the high school. But it was very helpful to see it in that scope and to see it from that perspective. So I'd highly recommend it, just to get a better view of what their day-to-day scene is like there.
So if you're interested, just contact me and we'll set something up. And we don't obviously it doesn't have to be, it can all be individual.
Anyone else?
I mean,
Nothing tonight?
nothing tonight.
All right.
This comment part?
Sure.
Yes, I have some things to say. I know everyone's shocked, aren't you? I had the pleasure this past weekend of going to No One Leaves Hungry. That was put on by the culinary and drama team at the Carver Middle High School, benefiting the Shane Gives Thanks food pantry, and it was a wonderful event. I'm so proud that Carver is such a caring community and that we have students that give back as much as they do. It was great to see so many families there. It was really wonderful. So thank you to everyone that participated. Thank you for supporting our food pantry. And Shane gave a speech and he did a great job. I mean, he's such an inspiring young boy, young man, I guess I should say. So that was great.
The only thing I'd add to that is I'll let everybody know that in total they raised $4,000. So the through the production they'll be donating $4,000 to Shane Gives Thanks and the Carver Food Pantry.
That's excellent. That is great.
How is the food pantry doing, by the way? Is there Andy or
I haven't been down there.
a contributor? So I haven't heard much lately.
What did Shane say in his speech that they're through our remember the Pay and Packs program that we're sponsoring with them as a school?
Yeah.
They're serving over 50 lunches. 50 kids on Fridays are going home with Pay and Packs meals for the weekends.
Yeah.
And then I think he said that they're serving over 500 meals.
Right.
Yeah. So right now the food pantry is serving over 500 meals a month.
So I don't mean to interrupt your points. I think it's just a great one, though. If anybody out there is watching and thinking of contributing, the best way to get food or funds to the pantry
is go directly to them. So they're in Carver Square. That's where their building is, and if you contact them directly, and you can see it you can find the contact information online through Shane Gives Thanks. Also, I believe the Carver Food Pantry and Crystal McCogle. I always make sure I say it right. Crystal McCogle is the person who's running the food pantry. But I believe online Shane Gives Thanks is the best way to contact them.
Yes, and I do believe some Boy Scouts just did a food drive this weekend at Shaw's.
A few different,
Excellent.
So, we're fortunate. And then I also wanted to make everyone aware of an upcoming production this Saturday. Alice in Wonderland is going to be on Saturday at the Carver Middle High School. There's a 2 p.m. performance and a 7 p.m. performance, and the tickets are $5 each, and the kids and the cast and the crew, everyone has worked really hard, so they would love to see a full audience out there to come escape for a little bit with Alice in Wonderland and enjoy. So I'm looking forward to the performance, and thank you. So that's that. So I just wanted to let everyone know.
Very nice. Thank you. I was going to bring that up, so excellent. Thanks. I just say after this week is over, everybody has a vacation break coming up, so hopefully it's safe and relaxing and you all enjoy that time off. Come back rigored and ready to go. So with all those made, I would accept a motion to leave regular session and enter executive.
I'll make a motion to end the executive session and conduct strategy in preparation for negotiation, collective bargaining with union personnel, and to not return.
To not return to regular.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.